What is happening, guys, and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, thanks to the wicked team over at Toys Wonderland, we're going to be checking out the brand new InArt 1/6 scale standard edition, the Dark Knight Joker. Now, for those of you looking to add one of these to the collection, I'll of course be sure to smack a link down in the description box below, and this has got to be the most spoken about 1/6 scale figure of all time. There are so many debates online as to whether or not this is the best version of the Heath Ledger Joker from those Christopher Nolan movies, and I think it may just be, especially as far as the head sculpt goes. So as we jump into the details, I mean, come on, that is just so freaking cool, super hyper realistic. I do own a Hot Toys version of this guy, and I'll be sure to bring that out for a comparison later on in the video, but I can already tell you guys, this is so much better in both the sculpt and the paintwork. So we get some really sick looking scarring there for the cheeks and for the mouth. That just looks so cool, and I in particular like the kind of yellowed whites of the eyes. That is such a nice attention to detail, and much like Hot Toys, we kind of get this glassy effect over the top of the eye just to make it look super realistic. You can see the kind of chalky white paint that they've used for the makeup. I think that looks great, and the hair. Now this is actually the sculpted hair then, as opposed to I think the rooted version that they're bringing out. Honestly, from a faraway distance, you know, just on a shelf, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference, and I personally, just as a preference, much prefer sculpted hair than as opposed to rooted hair. I just think rooted hair requires way too much maintenance, and this looks awesome. I mean, you can see kind of the individually sculpted strands, which much like the face, have been painted so nicely, and this entire back compartment does remove for an eye rolling feature, which I'll showcase in just a second, and it's pretty difficult to make out where the seam of that removable panel is. So sweet attention to detail. And then we come here to the tailoring of the outfit, which I think looks awesome. In particular would be the kind of shade of purple that we've got here for the main outer jacket, and I love the weathering effect that we have applied over the top. That is really cool. You'll see more of this kind of throughout the figure, especially as we come around for the back. This kind of middle seam has also got some of that weathering, and it's a super long jacket. We even have kind of that orange inner liner, which is really cool. Kind of reminds me of the Jack Nicholson Joker from way back in the day, but that's really awesome. I do believe the bottoms have some very small bendy wire, so you can kind of pose it, you know, it's up to you guys. And we also get the holsters for the grenades, which too I'll showcase later on in the video. But there's a lot of layers going on. So we get the main purple jacket, we then get this grey one, which reminds me of the one he wore when he was robbing the bank, and then we get the green inner layer, which I think is really cool, so the waistcoat. And you'll see more of this when we do remove some of the other pieces later on, but as we just work our way down, you can see that die-cast chain, which is really cool. And then as we come all the way down here to the legs, I really like the texture and the paint we have for the shoes, and they've even gone to the extra extent of giving us some proper multicolored socks, something that you wouldn't even see just having this guy up on a shelf. Now in terms of articulation here, with all of the additional kind of clothing on, it is going to be a little more restricted, especially in the elbows, but I'll just very briefly go over it. So we do get a pretty nice ball joint here out of the neck, so this can look left to right as well as up and down. We get some very awesome ab crunch out of this guy too, so that can crunch forward. Back, it can also tilt side to side, and the shoulders, I was quite surprised to see, not only have kind of the in and out range, but they also have some butterfly joints packed in there, which are great, especially for going backwards. That's super cool. There is a double jointed elbow, which still gets you a pretty decent range despite him having all of these additional layers over the top. And then here for the hands, these are kind of magnetized on. They can rotate the full 360, as well as can kind of hinge up and down, much like you would expect from some of those other 1/6 scale collectibles. And then we come down here to the hips, which can kick forwards that far, so not too bad at all. They can also kick back to that far. You may be able to go even slightly further, but again, I don't potentially want to run the risk of damaging the clothing. They can kick out to the sides. We do get a very slight thigh rotation, and then here for the knees, these are ratcheted. These can bend way past 90 on a double hinge joint, which is awesome. And then we come here to the ankles, which can rock forwards and backwards, as well as also side to side. So articulation wise, with all of the additional clothing we have, again, not too bad at all. But we have to talk about one of my personal favorite features about this figure, and that is the mechanism that they've smacked in the back of the head for us to control the eyes. So as we come around to the back of the head sculpt, this piece of the hair is removable. It does magnetize on, so we can just take that out, and we get this really nice switch, which is manually operated. So you can move this around on a ball joint. You can get the eyes looking left to right, which is really sick, as well as can have them looking down, and my personal favorite, having them looking up, which from certain angles, I mean, come on, that just looks so killer. So really awesome head sculpt, honestly guys. As far as this is concerned, I cannot complain at all. But it doesn't end there, as we get a shed ton of accessories. So first of all, here we have his main machine gun. Really sick looking detail. I was very surprised to see that the majority of this, I think, has been made out of die cast. So pretty hefty looking piece, really nice sculpt work. It has a few features, so you can swing this section to the back. The magazine is removable, although on my copy it is a little looser than maybe I'd like. It doesn't take much at all for it to just drop out in a static pose, so that's a little bit unfortunate. And you can also manually reload this by taking this section here, and it is spring loaded, so as you guys can see, it will launch back into place. So that's really cool. We also get a set of the grenades that we see him use in the movie. These two are all die cast and they're held on via this kind of string, so very nicely detailed, and you can harness this within the trench coat much like we saw in the movie. So yeah, those are really cool, and I love the attention to detail that we have on those grenades as well. There's also a smaller handheld gun, which much like the other one too has got some die-cast components, so you can manually reload that. It is spring-loaded, so will launch back into position, and it also does have a removable magazine, which holds in a lot better than the other one, and they've even sculpted and painted some bullets in there. So yeah, that's a really sick attention to detail. We get some handcuffs, which are also die-cast to recreate that scene from where I think he's in the prison. These can be open, so you can clasp them around the wrists of the figure, which I think is really cool. And check out the detail on these, that's awesome. We get loads of wads of cash, which makes me super jealous, but these are really cool as well. Very nicely detailed. They are completely paper, so definitely just be a little more gentle, but I thought these were quite a nice inclusion, especially to include as many as they have. And to go along with the wads of cash, we also get a wad of cards, which I thought were really cool. Each of them have, I think, their own distinctive graphic, although most of them are kind of just jokers, but very nicely detailed. Again, I wasn't expecting them to include as many of these with the distinctive features like we're seeing here, so yeah, that's pretty cool. There's also the knife that we see him use in the movie, so this is it in its closed mode, probably the most iconic weapon he uses in the film, and this, much like some of the other weapons, are manually operated, so we can just slide that up to reveal the blade, which has been picked out in a nice metallic silver. This, unfortunately, I don't think is die-cast. I think it's just plastic painted over. I mean, considering how small and sharp it would be, I can completely understand as to why it has been made out of plastic, but yeah, that's pretty cool, and it does just simply slide back down. We also have here a few interchangeable pairs of hands, so this one is so that he can hold the grenades properly. We get this one, which I imagine would be to hold any of the blasters. There's also this one, which I think would be for the knife, and then we get two card-holding ones, and then one fist, and these are all in addition to kind of the grasping hands that he comes with straight out of the box. And then finally, for swap-out accessories, we also get these interchangeable kind of lower forearms and hands for when you remove the jacket, which I'll showcase in just a second. All of them are pretty much identical in terms of paint. It is really just the sculpt which differs, but amazing detailing on those fingers. I mean, you can see the kind of white chalky paint on the hands, which looks sick, and the red knuckles, that looks awesome, and even the palm of the hand has been sculpted and painted so nicely, and I really like the veining detail that we have for the forearms. Honestly, the attention to detail on this figure just across the board is next level. I mean, check out the veins that we have here for the inside of the arm. That is really nicely done. And then the final big accessory that this guy comes with is probably one of my favorites, to be honest. It's a magnetic base that actually locks onto the sole of the feet. So no ugly cradle like we're seeing with Hot Toys. I really like that. I think the kind of floor paneling that we have here has also been painted and sculpted nicely. And we have the Dark Knight Joker engraved all the way around the base, which is sick. And it's in an appropriate Joker purple, which I think is really sweet. And as we come around to the underside, as you can see, Dark Knight Trilogy, Queen Studios, InArt the Joker, and 1/6 scale collectible. But we're not done just yet, so as alluded to previously, you can remove the jacket and the inner waistcoat to attach some of those additional components. So the instructions go into a lot of detail on how to do this, but this is my personal preferred way of getting it done. So what I like to do is come here to the hands and just pop those off. Like I said previously, they are magnetized and then kind of grasp around this small peg. A much better system, in my opinion, than Hot Toys, as the peg doesn't come out with the hands. Do the exact same here for this side, so just gently wriggle that off. You'll now want to take the arms and move them backwards, and those butterfly joints really help in getting this off pretty easily. So we're just going to gently take the coat and pull it over the top. So just remove it, just like that. And that's what the inner layer of the jacket looks like. So very nicely detailed, especially for something which is essentially an underlayering of clothing. That's really cool. And then much like the coat, we can then take the jacket and also gently take this section off. Now, as you can see, this is kind of looking like it's broken, and that's because it's simply just detached during that whole process. But to officially do it, you are recommended to detach the cufflinks, which are held on via a tiny little clasp. So what's going to happen is we're going to shoot this section here back into place, and then we're going to take the cufflink and it does just slide out just like that. And now we can remove the lower part of the forearm, and this is where we can kind of slide this up. You can see, much like the wrists, it does operate on that kind of magnetized peg, and we can bring in some of our interchangeable forearm pieces. So these will just slide over the top, and that is really awesome. I like that they included these, because basically they could have just left us with these, but then you would have the kind of ugly wrist peg visible, whereas this time it's a complete sculpt, and I think that looks much, much better. So yeah, that's really awesome. And again, you'd repeat the exact same process for the opposite side to get the desired effect, but really awesome. And the kind of jacketless look that we have here just creates for an entire different display option, which I am personally a massive fan of. And just to showcase how the back of the waistcoat looks, you can see how we've got a nice buckle, very nice detailing. It's all the way throughout this figure. So yeah, overall, such a sweet looking piece. Now, as we take a look at a few size comparisons, we have the InArt 1/6 scale Joker compared alongside the Batsuit, which I believe came in the Hot Toys Armory, but as you can see, I mean, Batman is much bigger, appropriately bigger when compared to the Joker like he was in the movie, but I do remember him maybe being just a smidge taller, so maybe the most recent DX Hot Toys Batman they brought out, perhaps maybe more to scale, but honestly, I don't think these two look too bad at all next to each other. And then finally, for a head-to-head comparison between, I want to say, a Hot Toys Joker, to be quite honest, I'm not sure if some pieces of this are kit bash, so if you guys know, please let me know down in the comment section below. But as I said previously, I really don't think there's much of a competition to be had here at all. The new InArt version, as you would expect, is much more accurate, a lot more realistic, because it is a newer figure. This sculpt came out many, many years ago, but to be fair, it's still not bad. It's actually a pretty decent sculpt, but definitely this new InArt version is vastly superior, especially in the sculpt department. And so, wrapping up on my review for the 1/6 scale InArt, the Dark Knight Joker, in all I think is a sick looking piece. I mean, I can only speak from my own personal experience, and when comparing this to a previous 1/6 scale Joker that I own, this is vastly superior. I mean, the head sculpt is next level. It looks hyper realistic. I think they've been able to do something with that face sculpt that up until this point we haven't yet seen in 1/6 scale form. You know, some of the 1/4 scale figures maybe hold a candle, but they're going to, considering they're much bigger and much more expensive. This one I think looks awesome. I mean, the hair, I personally love the fact that it's sculpted and not rooted. I mean, whether or not you guys prefer rooted hair to sculpted, it's just going to be a personal preference thing, but I really like the way this looks. I think the paintwork across the board is top notch. I also think the tailoring on this figure is awesome. He comes with a great array of accessories, especially for this being the standard edition and not the deluxe edition, and I think the articulation also is really nicely done. He does come with a magnetic base, which I know I keep going on about, but I really think is such a sweet highlight, as I am so sick of cradles. I think magnetic bases are definitely the way to go. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you are after picking this up, again, be sure to check out the link in the description box below. And I have to say a massive thank you to Toys Wonderland for sending this here my way for a review. As always, I thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.